Hello, everyone. Welcome to those who are here in person and those who are arriving. Please come in, and many more who has arrived through the beams of the sun. Even though there is no sunlight, they have arrived through the sunbeam through through Zoom. So welcome, everyone. Most of you probably are familiar, unless those who have just joined this term. I'm doing a teaching on the perfection of wisdom, very freestyle writing on the subject by a celebrated Tibetan master who is a great expert in this topic, not only during his time, but I think even after that there were no greater scholar than he, who became a great kind of a figure on the topic. Not only did he write a commentary on the 100,000 verses of perfection of wisdom, but also on the 8,000 verses, mostly sticking with the text themselves. But this one is a very indigenous writer, you can call it. He doesn't use writing on any verses or something like that. He wrote everything in prose, but nevertheless have arranged in a particular fashion that becomes a little bit more palatable for people like us who can really understand and put to good use. So before the teaching, we will do the refuge, and refuge is really renewing our sense of faith and confidence in how true the Dharma is and how valid the Buddha's realizations are, and whatever level of validity your experience and confidence you have, you need to express that during the time when we do the refuge. It's how much safer we are when we walk towards the light and adhere to the Dharma in our thoughts, in our deeds, in our ways of doing things. And so we need to repeatedly renew that refuge, renew that commitment to practice kindness by respecting the Buddha and his teaching of nonviolence. We call refuge. And how best we can behave by learning to practice the four immeasurable to fellow sentient beings who are not often easy in situations because of their karma or our karma, and some have too many problems than we can accept, but we need to practice kindness with them. If we have refuge, we will practice kindness, but not judgment, not punitive, reactive, judgmental thing. If we do, we have lost the plot. So therefore, we renew our commitment to practice loving kindness and compassion. And when we do the former two regularly, you will have a lot of joyfulness. Your joy comes from practicing kindness and loving kindness and compassion, not from things, possessions, or positions. And even beings are still there that are really difficult to deal with. We know how to practice equanimity. We don't give up on them, but we learn to treat them as if someone might need to put prayers on and revisit it in another different time, but not give up on the sentient beings, because a bodhisattva practitioner do not give up on any sentient being. One is too many to give up on. Even devotion to the Buddha becomes pretty useless if one is not willing to work with sentient beings with remote kindness and equanimity. So this is why we repeat these prayers at the beginning of every session. It's not just a formality, just doing the prayers. You should make it meditation. Really try to rekindle your belief in the need to practice kindness and compassion and the like. So with this in mind, please join your hands at heart, and we'll do the refuge for immeasurables and the requesting the verse to teach. And so we'll screen share for those of you who are on Zoom. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Happiness and the cause of happiness, may they be free from suffering, and the cause of suffering, may they never from the happiness that no suffering, may they draw equanimity, free from judgment and to those near and far, may all be happiness and the cause of happiness, may they be free from suffering, and the cause of suffering, may they never from the happiness that no suffering, may they dwell equanimity, free from her judgment and to those near and far, may all be happiness and the cause of happiness, may they be free from suffering, and the cause of suffering, may they never from the happiness that no suffering, may they dwell equanimity, free from her judgment and aversion to those near and far. According to the intelligence and predisposition of it, where they chanda dharma agrelo enkam So in the last term, we had 8 sessions on the first part of the Perfection of Wisdom teachings, in which we cover a great deal on the importance of preparing ourselves as a would-be suitable vessel or candidate who can conceive and adopt the practice of perfection of wisdom, emphasizing greatly, mostly importance of faith. Because there's a lot of misunderstanding or expectation in people these days as Buddhism doesn't need faith. Buddhism needs only reasons. In the Perfection of Wisdom, it says exactly the opposite. Without faith, you wouldn't stand a chance. No matter how much rational braining you will do, you will only get dry facts, but no development of your heart. So it was we've spent first 6 sessions, basically, if not all 6 sessions, at least 5 or sessions spent on the very importance of faith in the Buddha, in the truth of the teachings, and the importance of friendship and fellowship with the Sangha, so that you therefore practice with great faith and confidence in the teaching, not only the veracity of what Buddha taught, but that is validated by your own comparing of your notes with your every life situation. When you do employ the teachings, implement the practices, how bitter truth the teaching actually shows. How much of the very painful truths we don't want to accept, they are actually the truths of the teachings. First, truth of suffering or truth of origin, let alone because truth of suffering and truth of origin is not something you have to go far to look for. They're right on our forefront. But truth of the path is whereby a person then might find struggling to practice the path according to the best we understand, even we believe in them. But implementing of it requires a lot of training, a lot of discipline, and no one is perfect at any level. That's why it is not called perfection wisdom, because it's perfect right from the very beginning. But one has to first realize how imperfect most sentient beings are, and how they have to therefore slowly build from the ground up. And that foundation is the faith in the Buddha, in the teaching. Why? Because Buddha experienced. His teachings are not dry theories that he wrote, but rather validated through his meditative experience. Even the very well-sounding altruism is said to be relative and ultimate. The relative one you can learn, you can study, you can receive even form of blessing, but ultimate one you have to experience through your own realization. So therefore, the experiential realization is not reasoning. It's actually doing the actual faithful commitment to the practice. If one who understands the importance of reason but doesn't have the actual commitment to practice, to cultivate the realization, then this is why reason alone doesn't get us anywhere, but becoming only an academic in the knowledge of it, on the theory of it. So that's why Buddha's teachings are based on his valid experience, his own enlightenment. He put the very final seal. His teachings are called seal of the truth. 4 seals of the Dharma. We have to have faith in them. If we haven't got that yet, we can't accept that, we just don't have it. As simple as that. And no matter how much rationalizing and reasoning we do, it will be simply a theoretical intellectual exercise. And there will be very little development of a spiritual. But of course there will be a lot of intellectual sustenance and stimulation and so forth. So it's not totally useless. Totally useless for the academics. So of course here we are pursuing as a studious person who wanted to learn the teaching developed through one's own experiences by emulating the noble examples of the none other than the historical Shakyamuni Buddha himself and all his 7 great patriarchs or successors, the arhats, and then as well as the 84 Mahasiddhas, then the unbroken transmission of the Sangha, or the succession of masters that reach like galaxies of the masters from Buddha himself onwards, including his 16 arhats, as well as the 6 great ornaments of India, and true excellence, and these days we called 17 Nalanda Panditas, how through them this teaching came down. As Rongton at the beginning told us the succession of lineage of how this teaching came about through the Buddha, through the people seeing as a Maitreya, but actually it's Buddha who appeared in the meditation of Asanga, and then Asanga is the one who actually was the main author to write down some of the most fundamental Mahayana Buddhist literatures on top of the Mahayana Sutras. So we spend a great deal on that just to refresh everybody's mind. At least I need to refresh my mind, so that I need a context where we will start tonight. And then the main bulk of the teaching is about how to develop, go through the 10 stages of there are 10 chapters in the practice, and the first is the instruction. So the instruction is instructions on how to cultivate, yield, and conceive altruism. And one must therefore direct our faith in the practice of altruism. We must, to be able to invest lots of faith in the merit of altruism, we need to be disgusted by the suffering we experience result of our selfishness. So one who has developed renunciation from selfishness and then conceived the virtue and merits of selflessness is what is the first of the 10 instructions. Of that, the first instruction of how to conceive the bodhicitta, it talked about what bodhicitta is. This is just learning to do things for the other. And delightfully, not anything doing for oneself, but even small act we may be doing, like the teaching, listening, study we do. We should always try to put it at the highest purpose of listening and studying is for the purpose of attaining enlightenment, so that we can benefit ailing sentient beings who are struggling too long in the vicious cycle of samsara. So that is used as an example. And then Rongton gave us all the list of the Mahayana, the altruistic bodhicitta precepts that one should practice. And all those precepts will then given into analogy of 22 analogies, and these 22 analogies are divided into 3 lots. The first 3 analogies, the what we call the ground, the earth, gold, and the waxing moon. These 3 were given as an analogy of the wishing bodhicitta. So the altruism has 2 facets. One is the wishing, one is engaging and actualizing of the bodhicitta. So the wishing bodhicitta should entail 3 characteristics. Analogously, the use of the earth as a good determination. To practice bodhicitta, you've got to have a good foundation like the earth. So you should remember the earth, not to forget your determination, practice bodhicitta, wishing bodhicitta. And since there are very less, most of the time our feet is on the ground, we may not forget the earth, So the earth is a constant reminder of our determination to practice bodhicitta, wishing bodhicitta. Wishing bodhicitta has 3: the determination and actual intention and extraordinary intention. So when you have these first 3 aspects of the intention are considered secured, it's called armored intention. Armored intention. This is very important. In Buddhist, Mahayana, general Buddhist teaching, they say it's importance of Eightfold Path, and one of them is right thought, maybe kindness or whatever it is. But in Mahayana teaching, they say you need to armor that kind of good thought that has to have three facets. And that is, first is determination. You should armor determination to do for the benefit of sentient beings. So that should be like the earth. And then second is the quality of your determination, intention to implement that determination should not deteriorate as you put into practice. It should stay pure like gold. Gold, no matter how much you beat or burn or smelt or scorch, whatever you do, the gold will always hold its quality. It doesn't become rusted or like ordinary metals like brass. Likewise, the bodhicitta, when it's tested, intention, when it's met with the difficulties, it should not deteriorate the quality, but it should stay stronger. The more difficult the opponent or sentient beings are, more uncooperative the sentient beings are, that much we should improve our intention to practice bodhicitta like the quality of a good gold is. So that's the first two. The third one is the more you practice the wishing bodhicitta, the more you practice the wishing bodhicitta, it should give you the boost of extraordinary intention to keep the bodhicitta more so, not becoming discouraged by the non-acceptance of your bodhicitta by others, or not giving you some quick result that people may seek, like in the mundane world. But even though they may seem very productive, and you might have to always accept the blames more often than any credit. But still, you should not wane your altruism, but wax like the moon. So these three are the analogies of how to secure the what is called armored bodhicitta. That's intention bodhicitta, and so that's the how to secure the in. And so then rest of the 19 examples, the rest of the examples are examples of the what you call the actual implementation of actualized bodhicitta, so engaged bodhicitta, and then subsequent analogies. So all the 22 analogies are, with the exception of first three, which is the wishing bodhicitta. The fourth one is the overall analogy of the how you implement all the six paramitas. All the six parameters from perfection of generosity to perfection of self-discipline, all the way to perfection of transcendental wisdom. Each of these six must all, when you apply it, should be, when the applied bodhicitta should be like a fire. So fourth analogy is fire. What does the fire do? Fire burns and incinerates everything. It doesn't spare anything, Maybe a brick is a bit hard to burn, but still it will burn the bricks as well. Fire will burn everything. Likewise, when you engage in the actual practice of the six paramitas, it should incinerate all the antitheses of the six paramitas, such as miserliness by generosity, lack of discipline by self-discipline, impatience by patience, laziness by diligence, scattered mind by meditation, lack of wisdom by wisdom. So they should incinerate all the opposites. So that's the fourth analogy. Then after that, all the rest of 18 examples, so what you have 18 examples, are divided into what will be 10 parameters, not just 6 as mentioned before. 10 parameters. So the 10 parameters have two sets of the analogies, one for each of the 10, and then you have what remained is another 8. So the 8 becomes subdivided within the remaining as a secondary analogies. So we'll come to those, each of them. Out of all of those, so when discussing each of the parameters, so in this way then Rongton says now we can discuss each of the parameters in relation to the relevant analogy, but each of the parameters should be discussed under this subheading. Laying the foundation of the Four Noble Truths. First, you lay the foundation of the Four Noble Truths and talk about the importance of adhering to a spiritual friend to teach you how to practice the perfections. And then third is how to unify both the method and wisdom inclusively, not one without the other. So method is compassion aspect, wisdom is the sixth paramita. How the method and wisdom should. No paramita is paramita unless it correspondingly has the wisdom aspect with it. And then how one should do the fourth one is training in the four practices. So this is the main outline under which each of the paramitas are discussed, and we already finished discussing the first of the paramitas, perfection of generosity, in the last session. Now we're going to start tonight with the perfection of self-discipline. And here it says, firstly, armor the intention. Firstly, armor the intention. So it means that when you practice any kind of discipline, whether your discipline could be your civil discipline or your pratimoksha or bodhisattva or vajrayana, whatever discipline you practice, you have, no matter how impressive your disciplines is, exactly by the books you might be do, which a lot of people do, take great effort to do that, but minus the armored intention. Minus the armored intention. So here in Mahayana Buddhist, you need to first have the right armored intention. You need to secure the bodhicitta intention. No matter how much you output the actual discipline, maybe you've given up tobacco or drinking or whatever, but what is your intention? What is the intention of doing that? So therefore it says, first of all, you need to armor the intention with the three analogies we mentioned. And then the second is then implementing of that as a result of having secured the armored intention. Word armored intention, beautiful. Sambe kogowa in Tibetan. Sambe means thought. Ko means armor. Goa means have it completely covered. You're completely covered by the intention. You're armored by an intention. So unless you have secured the intention exhaustively, whether it's like earth-like, whether it's like a god-like, whether it's like waxing moon-like, unless you have your intentions completely tested, you don't go and implement your so-called the self-discipline to impress anybody or even yourself for that matter. So that's the securing the armoring your intention. So, for instance, when we talk about that, first of all, in order to guard your self-discipline, you need to have the determination that is so well grounded like earth. You say, I really need this. If without this ground of determination to do this, I've fallen off, slipped my feet so many times. I need this ground, firm ground of my own right intention to benefit myself and others in the future. I need this bodhicitta. So you need to secure the ground like a firm ground, like kind of a ground like a determination. And then that determination is not just also periodically when you feel like it. On some full moons you do it, new moons you do it. No other days, not like that kind of. Consistently practicing like a gold is always gold, There's no time it is brass. Gold is always gold, so you should have unchangeable characteristic of that bodhicitta motivation. That unchangeable like a good quality gold. Your discipline should be like consistent. That means most people, almost 99% people are not consistent. So they have to learn to become consistent. It doesn't mean that people who practice Dhamma always consistently 100% all the time. Then we wouldn't have anybody left in samsara. So most people are suffering inconsistency. So they need to drop the brass and try to replace with the gold. So they need to work their way up, So everybody sort of try to pick up the merit point, that they lack. So consistency doesn't mean you become consistent all of a sudden as soon as you start, Asanga himself meditated 4 lots of 3 years. Each of them became so inconsistent. so unsatisfactory. He basically had to give up the whole retreat. Then he realized the point was to be kind rather than to be very good at a retreat. So that's right. So sometimes people get so caught in the form of the meditation, the form of the discipline, and missing the whole point, And then the Maitreya said, "Look, I have been with you all this time, but you were so preoccupied, obsessed with seeing me, and the moment you forgot me and remember kindness to save this dog, and then you have met me." So don't be too harsh on either of yourself to others to be consistent, and then get disappointed when they're not, or yourself not. But at least make incremental progress. Make little progress in your own side. Yes, you may not be perfectly like as good as he expects or they expect or like he is, but at least from your own side you have made little improvement. Really helpful. It will really. We have to be gentle with ourselves. We're talking waxing moon. It doesn't become full moon all of a sudden. By the way, tonight is full moon, and a pink one, I'm told. Pink full moon. I've been watching 3 days ago. Full moon is coming, but not yet. Like that. So you should not try to be full moon too quickly, okay? Give yourself and others some time to allow to wax. Be kind to each other, and don't think they are not trying. It's very important. So not only should our discipline should be consistent and unchangeable like gold, and try to make a little bit progress. Slowly, drop by drop. Then the jar will be filled. The bucket will be filled. Drop by drop. And then your discipline, that you're guarding the discipline, is actually progressing qualities. You're a little impatient, a little lazy, you're less lazy, you're a bit more patient, and you can see your progress alone makes you to smile. And you don't compare with other people necessarily harshly, okay? It's very important to be cognizant of our own progress or lack thereof, and then slowly making progress like the waxing moon. So this is extraordinary. And you never know someone's progress is, someone's failure. so someone is not good enough. They can never be contented with others. Others would be quite different. So these are the first three, which is this armoring your bodhicitta to practice discipline. So that's the first one. The second is that engage in the actual discipline. So this means to engage in the actual discipline, you have to lay the foundation of Four Noble Truths first. So laying the foundation of Four Noble Truths. So this is very important. That's why the Rongton's text is very unique. He interplays Four Noble Truths with every single of the 6 parameters, and then explains you to understand. So Four Noble Truths is not some elementary teachings for beginners. It's called truth. Truth is only seen by the seers, not by the fool. So those who see the Four Noble Truths is not the beginners. Beginners don't see the Four Noble Truths. Only those who see the truth see the truth. Seer of the truth are Aryas. If you see the truth of suffering, your eyes will never be dry, because you will be always feeling tearful of the plight of pitiful sentient beings. And when you're able to always fix your attention to the range of the plight of sentient beings, you can see the truth, which is bitter. Bitter nature of samsara is always drowned into the suffering they least want. Nobody wants suffering, but they just get just that. Nobody wants even slightest suffering, but they are getting in a pit of the sufferings. So that's the bitter truth. And ordinary people do not see the truth. They deny the truth. They reject the truth. It's the seers are the one who sees the truth of suffering and then develop compassion for the beings who don't see it, how they created themselves. Yeah. That's what we mean by laying the foundation of the Four Noble Truths. So what does it mean? Is the first of all, you have to lay the foundation of truth of suffering. Most people's truth of suffering is they lack discipline. That is the truth of suffering. The lack of discipline is what makes their life so much in chaos and problem. And as a result of that, their actions, their behaviors are not being corrected by themselves because they lack discipline. So the lack of discipline is the truth of suffering. And this is not so much honing onto ourselves, but it's all universal. All sentient beings are in the same boat. Only degree of differences, like all humans will go through birth, old age, sickness, death. And you wouldn't believe everyone who looks sad is affected one of or two of these things happening around their life, as well as many other mixtures of losing the loved ones or not getting what they want and not contented what they have and so on. All the suffering. So that when you see this first truth of suffering, you see the truth not only on you but universal to all sentient beings, without any exception. It's the only difference is just slight different variation between humans and animals, between you and someone else, and so on and so forth. Some people have the suffering of having too much children. Some people couldn't have anyone, even one. Husband want one, the wife doesn't want, and that's the thing. They both want, but never agree to have at the same time. So all these sufferings. Even first they want children to have happiness, but with the children there came more sufferings. They didn't realize children come with sufferings. So you have to see the truth of suffering is universal. The seer of the truth, first truth, is only the noble ones. Only the enlightened ones see these, and then accept their suffering with grace and humility, and see others suffering overwhelmingly more than theirs. And then they develop courage to lift their socks up, so to speak, and develop compassion to those who are struggling worse than us. And then we cope much better with our own suffering. We have to have the discipline to have seeing the truth of suffering. We are denying. That's the problem. We are denying. We don't want to accept the suffering. We don't want to see old age. We don't want to die. We deny. We reject. We're angry. There is suffering. We try to bargain. And through this, we are exacerbating the very suffering we don't want. But we don't see it, that this is what we're doing. So truth is very hard to see. You need a special third eye. I don't know the third eye will work. You need a wisdom eye. We call that. We need the wisdom eye to see the truth of this. Majority of sentient beings reject sufferings and people with problems, people with suffering, as if they are people without. Complete idealism. They try to idealize everyone to have no problem, no karma, as if that's possible. The samsara is not like that. All the water of the sea is salty. Likewise, all sentient beings are completely smoldered, smitten by all three kinds of suffering. Sufferings of suffering, sufferings of change. Sufferings of suffering is largely physical sufferings, like hells, animals, constant suffering of suffering, whether they run here or stay here or go out. They're never safe. They're always being chased or hunted by someone. If not by others, if not by humans, by their own self, by their own species. There's never a moment they can rest very peacefully. So their suffering is incessant. Incessant suffering is suffering of suffering, physical suffering. Suffering of change is largely human beings, Human beings, we can't cope with changes. And the third suffering, most people don't even know it's a suffering. Suffering of all pervasive conditioning of I am this, I don't want this. All this I am is the subtle, the suffering of all pervasive conditioning. So when we lay the foundation of the Four Noble Truths, first we lay the foundation of Noble Truth of suffering. The lack of discipline is the actual truth of suffering. So when we say the laying the foundation of Four Noble Truths, so that means we have to now engage in act of guarding the self-discipline. And this act of guarding the self-discipline should be like a fire. Fire burns the fuel of lack of discipline. Yeah, so we need to burn the fuel of lack of discipline. So that's the fourth analogy of engaging your bodhicitta, wishing bodhicitta, into engaging bodhicitta is we are actually incinerating our lack of discipline. Maybe we have a tendency to put off or delay or procrastinate, find excuses and end up not doing for a long period of time and always have this nagging mind against oneself. A lot of people suffer from depression because of that, because they didn't do this, then they are nagger themselves. They don't need another nagger. If you have another nagger, of course, it's on top of that. So if you're on your own, people still wouldn't get on well with themselves, let alone somebody else, because one has not incinerated the lack of discipline, tendency to postpone or procrastinate or excuses and not doing it, and whatever it is, whether it's your duty, whether it's your spiritual duty, or whether it's your professional duty or your filial duty to your parents or your mother or to your young or to your friends or to your community. If you are not doing them, then you're not incinerating. You're not doing your bit of it, so you lack discipline. So you haven't burned the fuel of lack of discipline. So if you're engaged, your self-discipline is engaged, it should first incinerate some of the fuels of lack of discipline. Lack of discipline, because then you are reducing your lack of discipline. What are the lack of discipline? Maybe you have certain things you should not do. You're still doing them, so you are still doing them. You are not able to drop them because it hasn't been incinerated. Or whether you want to do some good practices, maybe you want to meditate regularly. You're not meditating, you're not doing them because of that. You're not doing it because you procrastinate, you found excuse not doing it, and therefore you're not doing your practice either. So positive things that I call them prohibitive discipline and prescriptive discipline. Those you meant to give up, you are not giving up. Those you should take up, you are not doing them. So as a result of that, there's no incinerating. There's no burning of the fire like engagement of this discipline of self-discipline of engaged bodhicitta. Self-discipline engaged bodhicitta is when you practice punctuality or consistency or what you prohibit, you try to restrain this, you try to practice. When you're doing this, it will benefit you and the others and future. So with that mind, you have to foresee the benefit of it and then doing, because your motivation that is earth-like, that is like a god-like, that is a waxing moon-like, should be inspiring you to do the incinerating of the lack of discipline, lack of discipline. Okay, and then the lack of discipline itself is the true origin of sorrow. That's the truth of origin. Lack of discipline itself, truth of origin. So that's the second noble truth. Truth of origin is lack of discipline itself. All the habits that consummates it are, as a result, lack of discipline is truth of suffering. The truth of origin, the origin of that is because of the lack of discipline itself. Lack of discipline itself. And because then all kinds of non-virtues, unproductive, guilt and sadness, self-loathing and anger and all these things will manifest because of this origin of suffering. Remember, this is the origin of your sorrow. Why people are depressed? Why people don't like themselves? Why people are not inspired? Because they haven't done anything that inspires you. That it become now source of their sorrow because they haven't done this, they haven't done this, and they haven't patched up with the mom, or they haven't reconciled with the friend, or whatever the case might be. So many lists of things things. There's just like so many demons. And so that's the true origin. True origin of suffering is the one's own lack of discipline, and all that ensues from that is the truth of suffering itself. And also have fear that it will make you to be like that tomorrow and week after. It will definitely. Not only that, terrible rebirth and terrible death and a difficult rebirth and so on and so forth. You could almost see them very clearly, and because of this depresses oneself. That's what the true origin of sorrow. True origin of sorrow. You can almost foresee all the future suffering that would come. Because of this, when you get older or when you become like that, and then you have very little coping ability strategy because you couldn't accept and understand suffering and its causes. You haven't incinerated any of them; they're just piling up, and because of that, the burden, the truth of suffering itself is like a burden. You're carrying the burden that you yourself should unload it. But instead of unloading it, you are adding on top of that. And so wherever one goes, one is carrying the burden, and it's not getting lighter. And so that ever getting heavier burden of sadness or guilt or anger or depression or hopelessness, and all of this is the burden of suffering. Truth of suffering. There's a truth of suffering is the burden, and truth of origin is carrying of it. Truth of path is dropping off it, And truth of cessation, you no longer have any burden on your back. It's very good. So one needs to do this all, but with altruistic motivation. Then you are really armoring not only the bodhicitta, but we are not talking about some fantastic outer performance that impresses the world and everybody thinks you're wonderful or that. That's not, don't get into it. It's very dangerous. But more attitudinal behaviors. First, the attitude, mental behavior. Bodhisattva vow is mainly mental behavior. It's not a physical vow. In Bodhisattva vows, you don't need to shave or wear robes. In Pratimoksha, you do. Bodhisattva vows is vows of the mind and attitudes. So, because of that, it's most importantly, you need to witness your own attitude and the practice of it. So, you can see the truth of suffering, yeah? Truth of suffering. Now, if you see the truth of suffering and the truth of origin of suffering, that is lack of discipline and the suffering that caused by that, then you need to adopt the truth of the path. Truth of the path, noble truth of path. What is the noble truth of path? Noble truth of path is actual self-discipline, that you pick up the discipline, that you take and say, I will do. I won't do this. I will do this instead. So it is when we talk about that, then we talk about how many types of self-discipline there are. They are what we called, I was talking before, prohibitive self-discipline, usually called self-restraint discipline, but a prohibitive self-discipline means what you yourself conscientiously, voluntarily prohibit. Not because the book says or text says, but you voluntarily acknowledge it, that's exactly what you need, and then adopt that is called prohibitive self-discipline. And second is prescriptive discipline, which is traditionally called collecting virtuous habits. Collecting virtuous habits. Collecting virtuous habit really means prescriptive. You are prescribing yourself what to do. So one is to drop. The first one is a drop. Second is to adopt. Because we have to look at what works even linguistically best to your mind. What are you dropping? What are you adopting? If you're dropping certain particular thought habits, mouth habit, physical habits, or whatever, you know what are the things you need to drop that are harmless, that are harmful and not harmful to you and others, have caused harm in the past and will cause more in the future, and therefore being able to drop those prohibitive discipline, when we self-restraint, that is called prohibitive self-discipline. And then the other one is prescriptive self-discipline, means what you will do instead. If you stop drinking, then what will you do instead? So and so on. So you try to, not only you stop drinking, but then you are free from drinking. So what are you going to do? All the money and everything. Then I will do this. I will do this charity, or I will give the poor, or whatever. So then your hands are free. So then you adopt. Then you have the resources. Otherwise, the resource was all wasted. Like the people go in the poker machine. They just pour. They just change in the $50 there and change. What does it change? And then they pour into the machine. I mean, so easy. They should prevent that from happening and give it to the charity or the Smith family or someone like that. Would be wonderful. That's exactly. Then you actually have something to give to the Smith family. Otherwise, you're giving to the local footy club. I don't know what they do with it. They probably buy more machines more machines to trap people like you. Would benefit nobody. It's written there. Gambling is no good, but they're still making it do it. It's ridiculous. I don't know why they do it. Or smoking. There's a smoking kills, but they're still selling the smoking, That sort of thing, It's completely inconsistent. So one needs to therefore identify the truth of the path. Noble truth of the path is that which brings you path to drop certain things and adopt certain positive habits. So drop the negative habits and pick up the positive habits. And then the third one is very important. The first two is, of course, very important. Even if you do drop various bad habits and pick up very good habits, and you have really made your parents or friends all happy and so on, but still, that's not good enough. What did you do all that for? So that you are in their good books or something. Is that the only purpose? Of course, it will be good if you'll be glad and have a dozen people in your life, and they all have smiles, and it would be good, of course. But we can do better than that. The third one is benevolent self-discipline. Benevolent self-discipline is means it should be beneficial to other sentient beings. Yeah, it has to be beneficial to other sentient beings. Now, that's a very, very, very insightful mind, that even though we may do something very impressive, looks very proper, and we didn't make any mistake or looked perfectly good, but if we become really very, puffed up with pride and saying, "Oh, am I not good? Look at this," then it can completely cancel all the benefit. So the benevolent discipline is how should you make that to ripen and mature and benefit sentient beings. So that's the third one. So with regard to the dropping of the bad habits, whatever non-virtuous habits, physical non-virtuous habits, whether you're violent, whether verbally you speak harsh words, or you engage in unnecessary chatter, or you have a tendency to spend a lot of time doing that and completely unproductive and negative. So you need to identify what physical, what social, what verbal, these are true physical and verbal. Physical, verbal is very, very social. You can only do with somebody else. But the mental one you can do all by yourself. Very, very dangerous, that one. You don't need any assistant. You do not need any instigators. You can all do yourself. So mental people, a lot of thinking, I'm not good, I'm not loved. All that's really, really, we should stop that. Person who understand perfection wisdom said, I have Buddha nature. I have kindness. I have will. I have every good reason to be born in this world, to do good. I was raised with love and kindness, and I see always love and kindness from society and all things. I'm supported by love and kindness around me. So one needs to see, I too must reciprocate or emulate that to others, so that instead of thinking badly about oneself or picking a good question, only a questioning about oneself and having a big kind of sabotaging mentality towards, one should starting to be kind towards oneself. Benevolent, both self-discipline, we have to be benevolent towards ourselves. We have to have, I have Buddha nature. And even if somebody is really difficult, he too has Buddha nature. And when you start doing this, then you're not so much checking who's right and who's wrong, but who can make the difference to help the one who's difficult. The benevolent bodhicitta is benevolent bodhicitta. So dropping the bad habits, and then all bad habits, whatever that it is, one has to identify those oneself. What are the weak spots, weak aspects of one's physical, verbal, and mental discipline? They need to be dropped. One need to identify them, and then the picking up, adopting the discipline of the what do we call the perfection of self-discipline. Adopting the perfection of self-discipline, the qualities of the 6 paramitas. You need to try to develop qualities of generosity in your discipline, qualities of tolerance in your discipline, qualities of diligence and joyfulness in your discipline. People are observing the rules, but they're really looks miserable. They really don't want to do it, but they have to do it type of thing. They are not doing delightfully. So the quality of diligence should be in the discipline, quality of generosity be in the discipline, qualities of joyfulness should be, and quality of concentration and wisdom. If all the 6-fold qualities are in the practice of self-discipline, then this is called the prescriptive self-discipline. You have all the facets of the 6 paramitas through that, and your mental continuum will be blessed and soaked, soothed by it, soothed by it. Even if you are doing a little bit of early morning rising or late hours doing things, but you delightfully do it, You delightfully. Don't try to overextend yourself. Don't push to the last limit, but do it really delightfully. And then your self-discipline, those are qualities of self-discipline you are prescribing yourself to do, and you will do. And third, we were talking about benevolent discipline. Benevolent discipline is by implementing the 6 paramitas, particularly self-discipline, that you try to do it too, so that it has benefit to others, that it has a positive effect on others. Don't do it just to feel good yourself. This is the most dangerous thing. Most people always trying to do something if they feel good to the weekend or day. They don't see the overall long-term positive impact that it will have to sentient beings. Shakyamuni Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree. Even his body was emaciating. He was seeing the overall benefit he wanted to yield and radiate into the 21st century, even today. He included in his vision so that it will benefit sentient beings. Such benevolent intention with which he therefore set, that made him to forbear the hardship for the very reason that he did forbear the hardships. There's lots of people who go very weak and skeletal like the Shakyamuni Buddha. There's a lot of people do that in many, many extreme religious behaviors. You wouldn't believe how many people quite happy to stay naked and covered in ashes. We are not judging them. They might be amazing saints, and quite a lot of them are, by the way. We shouldn't. But people who lack the benevolent intention to do that, they might be just pushing themselves too little hard and not much benefit at the long run. And that's amazing thing about the benevolent self-discipline is those who have benevolent intention benefit other people much more. Some people do things for you a little bit, it benefits heaps. Other people done so much but didn't benefit much. That's the difference. Why do people see His Holiness Dalai Lama for 1-2 hours in the stadium? They all become benefited. Because his mind is so developed, and he just sit there, he just comes there with fully waxed bodhicitta, and he radiates unconditional loving kindness. He means it, and the benevolent effect it has doesn't go away. It doesn't disappear. So that's why we're talking about the formidable merit, the great power of the benevolent motivation, the bodhicitta. Why we talk about armoring bodhicitta? So that this benevolent effect is delivered to sentient beings. Why did Buddha Shakyamuni Buddha enlightened say 2,600 years ago his teaching is as relevant, as fresh and valid as it was then, is now? Because it is yielded through the realization of such fully developed bodhicitta. That's why it has this amazing benefit. People don't need to believe and follow religiously, but the moment they read the Dharma or hear the Dharma, they will find something magic in the teachings or bring from the teachings. So this is called benevolent discipline, and the one's intention with which one should do, even though you may have impressed all the people from your actual adoption of good discipline and dropping of the bad habits, you did that. But if you have this clinging and grasping at how good I am, how pure I am, and then become very arrogant, and then competitive to the equals and jealous of the for senior and not look down, overlooking the or disregarding the junior, that shows there's no benevolent discipline. Person who has benevolent discipline, no matter how good your discipline is, 100 maybe 140 times more better than somebody, still you will be kind and compassionate and supportive to those people who are languishing in a very lowly status. So one doesn't play as if you are pure, you're so pure, unlike them, but that kind of righteousness. There's 7 pitfalls of self-discipline. And so when none of the 7 pitfalls happen, that's when the benevolent discipline is. So discipline is. And it's due to the merit of the Buddha observing all the discipline, 3 types of discipline, and then he reached Buddhahood. All the purity of the Buddha's blessing comes from his actual consummation of all the Shila Paramita. Because he practices that, therefore, Buddha is completely beyond sorrow. That's the noble truth of sorrow, noble truth of cessation. Yeah, cessation of sorrow is one who does not have any infractions, any drags or obscuration of wrongdoings and so on, because it's fully enlightened. Only fully enlightened one has the truth of cessation. So truth of cessation means cessation of sorrow. It's nirvana, means sorrow. Absence of sorrow means nirvana. Word nibbana or nirvana, Sanskrit is nirvana, so means devoid of sorrow. In Tibetan, nyangel lendepa. Nyangel lendepa means going beyond sorrow. Going beyond sorrow. Yeah, one who practices self-discipline has no sorrow. No sorrow of guilt, no sorrow of righteousness, no sorrow of competitiveness, no sorrow of looking others with judgment. You don't look with judgment. The person who has practiced his own discipline doesn't have any judgment to other people. He doesn't judge other people. He doesn't compete with other people. He's not jealous of other people. He's beyond any of those sorrows. Why? That's called truth of cessation. Those who practice the truths, those who practice the self-discipline, Shila Paramita, they are devoid of sorrow. And that means that they will have compassion for those sentient beings who are languishing without discipline. And they may have empathy for them. They may feel sad for the sentient beings. But they don't have the actual sorrow that ordinary people have. My brother failed or something. Oh, my sister didn't get the job or something. That kind of sorrow, not that kind of thing, There's no such kind of finite sentient being related sorrow comes to the Buddha mind, of course, if Buddha were to survey the plight of each sentient, he will be able to see that. But he himself does not have sorrow. He's like a lotus petal. It's not soilable by the mud in which it grows. So sorrow of the sentient doesn't sort of affect the demoralized Buddha. It induces his compassion even more than it demoralizes the Buddha. So when you have this considerable degree of practice of armored bodhicitta with engaged bodhicitta of self-discipline, Shila Paramita, you will see how much other people suffering or wrongdoing doesn't dent your morality. Doesn't dent your morale. Why? You have somewhat overcome to your sorrow from such inhibition, such kind of weakness of your mind. So that's the laying the foundation of the Four Noble Truths in relation to the self-discipline. Now, second main point is how should you go about being able to do that? You have to adhere to spiritual friend, Kalyani Mitra. You have to adhere to spiritual friend, and there are. It says there are three types of spiritual friend. With regard to relying upon the spiritual friend, there are three types of spiritual. First is enlightened virtuous friend. Enlightened virtuous friend is necessarily fully enlightened Buddha, who is rarest of the rarest. And there are not many. So that's why the Buddha is Ratna, Tri Ratna. One of the three Ratna means three precious gems. He's so rare. It's not just rare, but that's got no use, like rabbit horn or something like that. But rare that one should discover, it's an incredible value. So the fully enlightened Buddha is the enlightened virtuous friend. And the enlightened virtuous friend is the perfectly exalted enlightened one. There's only one such being in this world so far. According to proper Buddhist teachings, there hasn't been many Buddhas. There has been only one historical Shakyamuni Buddha so far. The others are legendary Buddhas that are Brahma Buddhas or Bodhisattvas. But actual Buddha that came with 112 marks of enlightenment has only been one thus far. But because of our lateness to come as a human being, maybe we have done before, I don't know. I can't recall remembering as a human being in front of the Buddha and not getting anything. Probably buffalo, maybe somewhere in the mud. But we didn't make it. We didn't make it as a Buddha, as our spiritual friend. But one cannot see him directly, so one has to rely upon the oral transmission of the teachings, the agama, the teaching that Buddha gave. The teaching Buddha gave, oral transmission, what we call thus I've heard. So we are relying on thus I've heard by the arhats, like Ananda, like Shariputra, all of those great arhats who heard the Buddha's divine lion, roaring sound of the Buddha. One words you hear from the Buddha, that's enough for your little ear, I think. It will completely change your whole ear useful. You never had a useful ear until you hear the Buddha. Thus I've heard it's called. Yeah, they definitely heard, and it just hurt the ego so much it destroyed it. So we have to rely on the oral teachings Buddha gave, and that came through the succession of lineage. So that means we have to rely on human virtuous friend. Second is you have to rely on human virtuous friend. Human virtuous friend is not enlightened virtuous friend, so don't get it wrong. So enlightened virtuous friend is fully enlightened Buddha. Human virtuous friend is those who are aspirants, those who are aspiring, have adopted the discipline and trying their best on the path, maybe a few years, few decades senior in knowledge and experience than us, but otherwise they're still a human virtuous friend. So it's very important to distinguish. Mahayana teaching is very, very clear demarcation, clear demarcation between enlightened virtuous friend, human virtuous friend. So we have to rely on human virtuous friend all the way from the Buddha down to now. All the succession of lineage masters, all those photos you have the teachers lineage down here, all the 50 tankas down there. So that's like all the historical lineage masters from all the way to from Mahasiddha Virupa, Dhammarupa, and Avadutipa Gayadhara, and then the Sakya masters, and all the way to the present lineage masters. So this is called all the succession of lineage masters who are all human virtuous friend. Human virtuous friend, yeah? Human virtuous friend. So we have to rely on human virtuous friend who are all bonded together by the feast of the Dharma that Buddha taught. Human virtuous friend has realized by himself the actual meaning of the intended teachings of the Buddha, and he teaches to others. Yeah, the someone who has himself have adhered to the teaching, who's understand the levels of meanings of the teachings, and then he or she shares it to others. So that's you need to rely on human virtuous friend. At present, one has to follow such friends because we are on this conventional world. But the purpose of you follow the human virtuous friend is not to follow them. The purpose of that is to understand the meaning the Buddha intended you to get the message that he sent. The human virtuous friend is only the messenger. And the real message sender is the Buddha. And when you get the message, then you try to get the third virtuous friend. That is the one who realizes these teachings, is self-realized virtuous friend. This is ourselves. Now, the responsibility fall on our lap. That we have to realize the teachings. We have to practice the teachings we heard through the succession master ourselves. It's not the doing of the failing of the human teachers would make any difference to you. Maybe it inspires you some and make you lose the inspiration another. Maybe that's the only thing. But when you really get the inspiration, you wouldn't be affected by any ups and downs of human virtuous friend because they have their own karma. That's very good. So that means you have self-realization virtuous friend. Rangrik be geweshinyen. Rangrik be geweshinyen. That geweshinyen means kalyan mitra, your virtuous friend. You have this virtuous friend of your own growth, your own seeing the truth for what it is worth, and then truly realizing and validating it through your own self-experience and examination and sowing. And then you see that how my minding my own mind is the true teachings. Even the Buddha himself was here, touched with the holy hand, whatever, still wouldn't wash your sins, so it says. You throw a whole bucket of water, still doesn't wash anything. You probably wash better under the shower, So it's not like that. Buddha said, I never wash anybody's sins even with him. Only give him, showing the way to people, does he give people liberation. And so therefore, what should you rely upon? The self-realization virtuous friend. That your own self-transformation and maturity and growth, Rangrik Pe Yishe, this concerned with the meaning of both external, which is the historical Buddha and human teacher, and ultimately inner virtuous friend. That is in your own mind that matures and realizes Dharma. That's such an important. There's so much emphasis on guru worship, which is people worship. This is exactly why the Lamaism got it wrong, because people think is the Lama will liberate you. Of course, we like to believe they can, and we wouldn't be denying if they did. But we would always keep our hope alive. So don't give up your hope saying the virtuous friend doesn't liberate anybody. I have to do all myself. Don't totally de-link like that. Always keep the human relationship and good cordial relationship and respect going on. But deep down, most importantly, one has to develop one's own realization. That's why it's called inner spiritual friend. Inner spiritual friend is our own cultivation, development of that. So that's the second one. Third is now training. Now then, therefore, now after you have heard and listened to the intended teaching from the enlightened virtues from the Buddha through the succession of human virtuous friend to yourself, to the extent of boosting your confidence and wisdom and all the good qualities in you, then you see the growth in you, then how do you now make the growth, make sure that it's combined with the right method and wisdom? So the third is training in the union of method and wisdom. Now, the training and the method and wisdom is that whenever you practice any of the above-mentioned three types of self-discipline, whether it's prohibitive, prescriptive, or benevolent, or three of them, or just two, whichever of them, whenever you practice that, one guards one's self-discipline with the purities of the three circles of the wisdom, which means the interpenetration of the subject, object, and action of the virtue, discipline. So for instance, you gave up something, and what you gave up, you no longer are addicted to it, and then you did the giving up. So you're the subject who did the giving up. You gave what say drinking or something, and then that with the teaching. So you should meditate on the purity of the interdependence of the three things: subject, object, and activities. They are all interdependently originated, dependent on all. So you can't be pure unless you gave up something. So a person who has never drank before, he can't say, I gave up drinking. He can't say, I gave up drinking, because he never drank. Don't mean that he doesn't have merit of not drinking, but he didn't have a lot of merit because he didn't have to give up anything. So therefore, a person who doesn't drink at all shouldn't feel that he's very, very pure, because he actually didn't give up anything that he was addicted to. So therefore, one who actually gave up something that he was addicted to, so that object that you gave up, and that thing you did the giving up, and the teaching that influenced you all are interdependent, all are interdependent. None of the three, or even two of them, are doable without a third. So meditate on the lack of inherent existence of your morality. Very important. Because people become so puffed up thinking, I'm so pure, unlike him, that sort of thing. They don't realize you're only pure in relation to him. You're not so pure in relation to somebody else. So your purity is totally dependent on somebody else. So therefore, even your morality, even your self-discipline is totally interdependent on its antithesis, and as well as the teaching. If they didn't have the teaching, you couldn't practice those things. And so only by penetration of the problem and the remedy and the teaching when together, then there is the magic, So therefore, they are all mutually inclusive practices. So therefore, even the truth of sorrow, truth of suffering is that's why it says in the Heart Sutra, there's no sorrow, there's no suffering, there's no origin, there's no path, there's no cessation, inherently speaking. Interdependently, they all exist, but inherently there is no sorrow that exists by itself, or truth, a path that exists. Likewise, you shouldn't think that your practice of the morality is that is so truly existing that you are so pure. If you did that, then there will be the danger of the not having enough wisdom. You have method because you observe all the rules, but you don't have the wisdom. You're developing clinging to it as truly existing. So So that's why it says one needs to, with the three purity of three circles of the wisdom, it is the self-discipline not abiding in the extremes of cyclic existence, because it doesn't abide you in cycle of existence, samsara, because you're not practicing discipline. You are practicing discipline. So you're practicing discipline so that you don't stay in the mud of samsara. That was the purpose. If the self-discipline is guarded with compassion for the benefit of sentient beings, not just to make you feel good, that is self-discipline not abiding in nirvana. So then you are not trying to practice self-discipline so that you can go in nirvana, so that you can break from samsara. That's not the case. You are actually, even though your self-discipline is practiced in order, out of compassion to benefit sentient beings in the long run, so therefore you are not attracted to go into nirvana for your own convenience. So therefore you're neither falling into the extremes of samsara, nor falling extremes of nirvana's peace. You're not afraid of samsara suffering, nor attracted to nirvana's peace. That non-abiding nirvana is very important, a bodhisattva principle. So that's what's called, you have to do the practice. Each time you practice something, you should always meditate on the empty, lack of inherent existence of even your discipline. As was with generosity. When you practice generosity, you should think that my generosity is not inherently existing without someone receiving my generosity. So the recipient's humility to receive my generosity is just as much as cause of my generosity as much as my practicing generosity. So therefore, you do not see I'm independently generous person when somebody doesn't receive your generosity. So like that, we also need to interpenetrate the method and wisdom together and then meditate so that we do not get attached to the spiritual materialism, thinking I'm pure, not unlike him, that kind of thing, you know. So that's a very important point. Now we come to the last one, the fourth one, which is how to train on top of this method and wisdom in the four practices. That these four practices are firstly the very very good determination with which you want to practice, like earth, and unchangeable like the gold quality, and always improving like the waxing moon when you practice that. So that particular practice is called armored practice. Yeah, we talked about that at the very beginning. Yeah, so therefore it's called armor practice. It's got four of this. First is armor practice, making sure all the three main facets of the wishing bodhicitta qualities are there, like earth, gold, and waxing moon qualities. Then to burn or to destroy the fuel of your lack of discipline by engaging in either of the three types of self-discipline practice is the engaged practice. So your engaged practice, your practice is engaged. Paramita is you're engaged in the paramita practice. You know, you're engaged in the practice. You don't say, "Oh, I did my bit, so I don't have to do anymore," type of thing. But even if you did certain things outwardly, but still you are always engaged to better your mind, to improve your motivation, to improve your benevolent intention to benefit others. So with that, you're always engaged. There are no time you're not You are no time there you're disengaged from the practice. You always engage in burning the fuel, like lack of self-discipline or not so strong disciplines. What would have you in the sense? So, because the fire is always burning. Some fuels. Some always burning. Unless you reach second bhumi, there's always something to burn. If you reach second bhumi of enlightenment, then there's less things to burn. And then the third one is called guarding your self-discipline, moral precepts, by means of method and wisdom, which we talked about, is the accumulation of merit and wisdom. So that is called accumulation practice. So the fourth one, which is the practice, 4 practices, is actually summarizing all the above. All the things you did in the past in relation to those practices are now synthesized with these 4 practices. When you have done the 4 practices, then you have accomplished the result, accumulation, merit, and wisdom. And then the 4th one practice is becoming victorious from the 4 wrong conceptions, is renunciation practice. So you have what you call armored practice, engaged practice, and then accumulating practice, and then 4th one is renunciation practice. Renunciation of the 4 wrong conceptions. 4 wrong conceptions. I think we in this text the wrong conception. So wrong conceptions are in relation to the each of the practice of the 6 parameters. Wrong conceptions is like, for instance, lack of discipline is a completely deluded wrong conception. So if one has a lack of discipline, that deluded conception. So one should renounce the deluded conception. Second is the attachment to self-discipline as truly existing thing to do. inherently exists. So that's the antidotal conception. You attach to the conception of antidotes as truly existing thing. So one shouldn't be attached to the conception of the antidote as a truly existing. Antidote itself is not antidote unless there's something to remedy to, So therefore, antidote is dependent on what you need to remedy. Medicine is not medicine unless there is an illness for which it should be dispensed. Otherwise, sitting in the jar, and quite a lot of chemist shops, if you go there, they throw in a lot of the medicines. They have all these medicines are sitting nice, beautifully, but never got sold. So, but it's written there in May 3rd, 21, this last thing, and then nobody they throw away. So not truly existing medicine. And like that, the antidote is not truly existing. So antidote is only antidote when it has actually got a something to remedy. So one shouldn't attachment to the discipline, attachment to the self-discipline. How do you know that there is an antidotal conception to the self-discipline? Is then you just can't stand people who have no discipline. That's the sign of it, But those who have good self-discipline, even those who have no discipline, they still understand, these are the very Lord sentient being. I should work my kindness too, and not feel oneself as out of place, or them being not quite right amidst your goodness. Being able to work with difficult people, and seeing it is with them that we develop antidote, not because absence of them. So that kind of exclusivity is not right conception. So that's why I said the bodhisattvas are usually found amidst many deluded people. Bodhisattvas practice much better when there's a lot of deluded people. I don't know how productive the bodhisattvas are with the many other bodhisattvas. He said, today was not very productive because everybody was so nice to me. And I couldn't practice much. Wait a minute, you wouldn't believe how this point is very useful when you remember it when you're with the difficult people. It is here I need to really come to remember the real goodness is how to be with those with suffering, this with problem. That's the real discipline. Saying that I'm too good to be amidst this kind of people. Go away, I don't want to see you. That kind of exclusivity is definitely not. This is non-abiding nirvana. That's called. Why should it be non-abiding nirvana? You should be abiding nirvana. Why you stay up, come in the throngs of samsara? Non-abiding nirvana means you will not stay in nirvana because you will need to operate with deluded sentient beings even more fittingly, because their problem are hips, and there you should operate much more functionally than you being out of use up in the nirvana. Amazingly important point. These things are not just dry concepts. Sometimes people, I don't want anything to do with these people because they have this problem, they are like that. That's ego. This is the antidotal conception that I'm too good to be with them, and that kind of thing. We should have the humility to work with the very difficult situations. Then we know that how we have even more room to grow and unfold than we thought was adequate. This danger of being antidotal conception. That the antidote is a truly existing. Medicine is not truly medicine unless it's got illness. And the third one is grasping to both fault and antidote as truly existing is materialistic conception. Materialistic conception means you actually see them as substantially existing from their own side. There's no substantially existing virus unless it goes in people. The virus doesn't touch this singing ball. It doesn't do anything. Singing ball doesn't stop singing. Singing ball is inanimate, not a living thing, but it still doesn't get affected by the virus. Why? The virus is not truly existing virus from its own side, unless with the people who have lungs, who need to breathe. So it's very important. So who is the problem? Not from their own side. Who is the problem to whom? Not from their own side. It's only in relation to how you predispose or don't predispose. It's amazing. So this is what we call materialistic conception. So no fault is independently fault. No antidote is also not truly antidote from its own side. So that's the third conception, materialistic conception. And fourth conception is imputational conception. That is grasping to the subject and object, and as well as the antidote as merely imputed. Aren't they? They're merely imputed. Imputational conception means they are merely imputed, and so shouldn't grasp them as truly existing. But we usually think the label is everything. We don't realize the label is just merely labeled. It doesn't. If the thing itself is not accepted by people, even if it's merely imputed, it's only relatively merely imputed. But it's otherwise it lacks anything that is imputed. When you really check carefully what is there in the imputed, there is nothing but the mere imputation. Mere label is there, but otherwise it's not there. Like you and I with our names. People say, oh, it's Rinpoche, oh, it's John, oh, it's Mary or something. But where's Mary? Just look in the ears. You couldn't find. Everybody got 2 ears. Everybody got this. Where is the Maryness of this? So you couldn't really actually find the identical imputation and imputed in the imputed. The imputed is completely absence of the imputation, imputed one. So if the imputed is inherently imputed, it doesn't need imputing. And also it will never change. It should remain permanently imputed, permanently what it is. Because it's lack, so everything's just merely labeled. They call it, I'm wearing this hat. Yes, you're just wearing the hat. That's right. You're wearing hat of the inspector. You're wearing hat of the nurse. You're wearing hat of the head of the patient. You're wearing hat of that. But after the nurse give you a jab, you give her the jab. So who's nurse? Who's not nurse? If you know how to put a jab to the nurse, you're also nurse. So who is who? Who is not who? So we're not talking with who's who, but who's not who. So don't take seriously when people call you names, when you understand this, because you don't have the imputational concept as truly grasping. You don't grasp them as truly existing, And that's very, very important, because you don't get offended very easily if you know everything is just mere labels, and so therefore your idea of he's so disciplined, he's so punctual, he's so immaculate, you might have this kind of imputation, he's so good or something, and you become so attached to the goodness of the imputation, and you become so arrogant with that level of your perfection, you can never accept anything less than next time. And this is why people suffer from becoming world number one, and then they have depression. Why? They're attached to the imputation, titles, the names. They get attached to the title as them. They don't realize it's just for a few minutes. It's just for a few minutes, depending how they go in the other court. and you 45th one become second, and then the first one become third one become 27th, and you cannot accept anything less than second, because you're so attached to the conception that I'm imputed as world number second. See, all suffering comes from this grasping to the imputations. Or somebody call you names, or somebody, or whatever. People really get hurt by these imputations, because deluded people think that what they say is what they truly are. They're not. But one who understands this, we are not attached to these conceptions. When you have not attached to any of these four conceptions, that is called renunciation practice. The Bodhisattva should wear all the blames. Why? They say Bodhisattva should accept the blames, because he knows he's not attached to the imputational blames. He has no aversion to imputation. Kadamba monks pray that they might be demoted to the ranks of the street dogs. And they still doesn't get demoted. And because they know they're so attached to being so important. To labels, to attachment. All this suffering from self-importance is imputational conception, grasping to the imputational grasping. So therefore, even if one practices the self-discipline, even if one observes quite a lot of the discipline, one should not get attached to the meaning, to the term "I'm pure." They have to renounce that. They have to renounce those four conceptions. Then their practice has this, endows the four practices. So what we have, the need to lay the four foundation of the Noble Truths in relation to self-discipline. And then we need to adhere to the instructions of the fully enlightened virtuous friend of the Buddhas through the succession of human spiritual friend, until it becomes us, become who develop the self-realizational spiritual friend. We become our own mentor, so to speak. We become our own therapist, so to speak. We become our own mentor. We become our own when you meditate, some things clarify, some penny drops. That's a self-discipline. Your practice gives you this self-realizational. And this comes, This comes as a result of you being able to unify the method and wisdom and these four practices. So this is the framework with which each of the remaining four paramitas is also going to be discussed. So with this, we conclude here tonight on the second paramita, perfection, Shila paramita. The teaching covers that, and in many ways we can now, because its emphasis is the self-realization, self-discipline here. Self-realization, self-discipline, after listening and reading these texts, and then you realize, okay, how now internally we have to do the spring cleaning of our own attitudes and various things, do's and don'ts, mostly our mind, mostly our attitude, rather than the things, external things. External things are also important because they're socially relevant. But personally, it's more relevant. What kind of demons of thoughts we don't host? What are kind of negative, judgmental thoughts we do not sort of recruit in our mind? And how to let go of renounce the judgment of yourself or your past or some others, and probably more important, not to judge your past so much with a lot of sort of contempt. You should feel kindness to your past. I didn't have the teachings, so I was totally blind, and I was misled. I was not assisted by bad friends, and according to the result of this, I languish in the deluded world of samsara. And you look kindly to your past. And then we try to mend your past, try to become friendly of our past. That is self-realization of spiritual friend. And don't be this person who's this and who can't accept the past. Past is not there. Past is not there except the one you're rewinding back, or the replaying back. So don't learn to play back. If you play back, just delete them. Play back to delete them. And on my phone says these days, oh, no, you have no memory. And that means I have to delete all those other things, I have to delete all of those things. And they say you have 1K free. It's very good. All of a sudden, I got huge space because I deleted all those things. So that kind of self-realization, we just delete. Don't become the past. Don't become yourself. Just not think of that as anymore, and see that as something that has completely concluded and in close, and not by neglect, but you have grown. So this self-tonglen is very important. We have to do tonglen with the past self by this present self, who has a little bit of sense of dharma and maturity, and then understand and accept with great kindness and compassion. If we don't do with ourselves, self-realization tonglen, we can't do with tonglen with other people. It's a tall order. So it's important to do the self-discipline. This type of thing is doesn't mean you have to shave your hair and become a monastic tomorrow. It doesn't mean that. You might still stay in your ordinary form, but try to do the real cleaning in your own mental attitude towards your past, towards some of the people in your life, and how I can drop these nagging thoughts and enmity or ill will, or this is so bad, this is so undisciplined of me, still keeping this wrangling, this malice going on over that issue. I should drop these things, and this is no good. And how long I have been carrying this burden that's really breaking my back. I need to drop this burden. Truth of sorrow. Truth of sorrow is the burden. You just need to cut it from yourself, and then drop the burden. Drop the burden of ill will and self-nagging, and that is real practice, real self-discipline. So we have to do a lot of kind of emotional kind of surveying of our own perception of ourselves or our mother or our whoever, a particular incident or whatever, and try not to hold that very bad opinion, bad perception that is really hurting you and hurting your relationship and your fitness to do anything. You realize, I need to drop this. This is what I need to drop. This is why I was listening to the Dharma. This is why the Buddha taught this with great care in the perfection of wisdom. This is why the monks who heard, thus I heard, what Buddha was dwelling in Rajgriha, surrounded by great many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and Shariputra and Avalokitesha had this conversation. The conversation took place to warn people like me not to carry this kind of burden. Yet I'm carrying all this ill will and resentment about that or this or whatever. I should drop this tonight. Tonight is full moon. It's a good night to drop some burdens. Good night. Put in the drops. And tomorrow is going to be waning moon. It's totally different moon. So you should totally give yourself a break. There's only one full moon a month, So today we coincided the first lesson with the full moon. May you all be able to adhere and listen deeply and heed to the very thing that you heard, and try to make peace and practice dharma and change the karma. And you wouldn't believe, listening to the dharma and heedfully hearing it deeply until it hurt your nest of problem, and then taking the instruction like a real drop of the balm that you really need to apply on the sore parts of your life's bottom. And so that you can at least sit comfortably without that sore bottom. So Dharma is medicine from that point of view, but that has to come from our realization, self-realizational self-realization teacher. And you would listen to the Dharma. You will remember the Dharma. It is not forgettable. Okay, that is called "Thus I have heard at once." You will not forget these teachings, because it is not worthy. It is too precious to forget. That's why they say you should recollect the virtues of the Buddha. You should recollect the virtues of the Dharma, and when you do, it brings so much sanity and truth and clarity and order in our mind, and it completely opens all kind of infinite possibility of growth and peace and bright waxing moon. Thank you. That's all we have time. Thank you, everybody. So next week onwards, anyway, I'll take some questions, but I'm sure these are answering many questions. It does answer some of my own questions when I do teachings. Because self-realization is all about not only when you're reading, but even when you're teaching, you're realizing something. You're realizing something. Oh, that's good you said that. It helped me. I don't know whether it's helped them or not. It really helped me. And that sort of thing happens. So thank you very much. Let's do the dedication merits, and please pray, offer these prayers for the very difficult time that lots of people are going through, particularly in Indian subcontinent by this pandemic and the world. So with this, we do conclude and dedicate the merit. Om Bade Mere Mevaga Dade Fa Menzaga Om Neze Mehale Baradobe from the Vajana Badare Zenere Herenda Mahayana Dije Whatever merit I have, may because televas to the Mahayana teaching courage, manjushin you as I'm Trabadra follow it all the example. I should the med excellent body jida where it has been meeting freely without generation. Thank you.